Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL Graduates. Welcome back to another video. We've just got past the craziness of game week 32 and we're heading into game week 33, another double game week, back-to-back doubles. Very much looking forward to it. Some of the assets that we had did very well in 32, some did terribly. Let's see who we pick to have a good game week in game week 33.
Okay then, so getting into Game Week 32, just to touch on it before we get into Game Week 33, I finished on 98 points last week with the triple captain in play with Isaac. So it boosted me up to around 200k in the world. I know it says 230k there, but they were pre-Newcastle and Palace ranks. We did record this last night. Terrible technological errors. I mean, we're recording this on Thursday morning now, which is good for you guys because it's, I guess, more up-to-date info, although not too much has changed since last night. Going into my team for Game Week 33, the plan is to bench boost this game week. So obviously that's been the plan since wildcarding back in Game Week 30. I'm fairly well set up for it. I've got 2 free transfers, not a lot of money in the bank though. It'll be interesting to see how I can sort of wiggle around some of these assets. So starting off in goal, we've got Edison. He's the main issue at the moment that I'm just waiting for news on. Obviously he came off with a groin injury against Crystal Palace after getting his assist last week. So I will just wait and see if we can get any sort of clearer update on him from Pep Guardiola. Hopefully he's fit, 'cause I don't really want to waste a transfer on a goalkeeper for a double. If I have to, I'll take a hit for him, just because obviously you can get into any other doubling team and it should realistically pay off this week. So yeah, not ideal if he doesn't play, but hopefully he does. The rest of the defence sort of picks itself. Obviously Timber hoping for a start this week after he played 95 minutes against Madrid in midweek. Gvardiol, obviously no attacking threat with him at the moment due to him playing centre-back, and it's very hard to get into that City defence in attacking areas. It's only Ruben Diaz and Gvardiol who are actually down as defenders in the game who play in defence at the moment. And then Daniel Munoz to round things off after his -1 point in a double game week. It's probably one of the worst scores I think I've ever had from an individual in a double. Hopefully he can improve on that. I guess the bar isn't very high for him to outscore that. What's the thoughts on that defence, Ben?
It's a difficult one for you with Edison, because I have the feeling he's going to miss the next few games, which means, of course, there's going to be potential goalkeeper transfer there. But, of course, until we have more information, we just don't know. Gvardiol, as you said, in centre-back is not ideal, but one we just got to grit our teeth and get through. So I don't mind that as a pick. And Timber as well, like you said, I don't think there's going to be too much wrong with that. And Munoz -1 last game week, just got to laugh at that. But he's got attacking threat, so I do see him getting sort of potentially an attacking return. I don't see any clean sheets from Palace going forwards, just based on how bad they were in 32.
Yeah, and then moving on into the midfield, then we've got fairly similar setup to Ben. Myself and Ben have very similar teams just because we wildcard at the same time. We're attacking the same fixtures with the same teams that are doubling. So, to be honest, most people's teams are going to be pretty similar if they're doing that same sort of strategy. Morgan Rogers is up first. Obviously, he got the assist against Southampton, which I didn't bench him for after his 2 weeks of returns prior to that. I expect him to get good minutes again here. I wasn't really worried about that Southampton game, to be honest. I think it was taken a lot out of context. Villa have a lot to play for in the league as well in the Champions League prior to them going out. So that doesn't change. And they're 2 huge games against Newcastle and City, which will almost determine where they end up in terms of that European sort of chase, I guess you could say, for those top 5 spots. Eze's up next, really disappointing. Obviously missing that penalty against Newcastle last night. It could have been a worldie of a game week for him. Obviously he had the offside goal chalked off against City for 3-0, and then misses that penalty, means Sarr outscores him by a point, which if you told me that after that City game, I'd been very, very surprised. So disappointing, but still happy to own him. I think he is quite dangerous. I don't think anyone who owned Eze expected penalties either. I think they thought that Mateta would be taking those. So, yeah, it was interesting for him to step up, and obviously annoying that he did miss. Saka's up next. I think minutes are going to be the interesting one here. He got subbed off relatively early last night at the Bernabeu, about around 70 minutes, which for me gives me a good indication that he probably starts versus Ipswich, but doesn't get the 90. I wouldn't expect him to get 90 in either of those games, but I expect 2 starts. So is that enough for captaincy? I'm sort of umming and ahhing about that at the moment. Mo Salah finishes off the midfield with Leicester away. Obviously, fantastic single game week fixture. I still expect him to be over 100% EO, around my rank 200k, just because there's quite a lot of, I guess, unengaged managers or players that will just not forget to do their team. So, yeah, what's the thoughts on the midfield, Ben?
Yeah, it's a fairly solid midfield, fairly template as well. You could have come away with a lot more points with Eze if he had put away that penalty. That's almost sort of a swing of like 9-10 points for people who have him, which is absolutely insane. I think Salah, like I said, will be highly captained by some engaged managers, some unengaged managers. Like the Leicester away fixture with the minute security is actually a really decent one for Liverpool. And yeah, like you said, Saka, I'm warming to sort of captaining him sort of more and more, just based on the fact that we think, based on the Real Madrid game, he came off a little bit early. Yeah, he could very well see some starts going forward as well. So yeah, all in all, like the midfield is very, very solid.
Yeah, and then moving on to the front three then, and I know myself and Ben have the same forward line, so I won't touch on them for too long. Obviously, Mateta, really disappointing last double game week, coming off before 60 in both. Hoping for a better performance from him. He just needs to kick the ground running in the first half of games, and then we probably won't see him get subbed off as early. Isak, obviously, slightly disappointing on the triple captaincy. Happy to get a double-digit return, but he could have had a lot more. 4 big chances missed over the 2 games. How he only came away with 2 goals in, 9 that they scored in the, or 2 returns, should I say, in 9, is a bit baffling, but more than happy to keep him for this single game against Villa away. There's not really many forwards that play for these doubling teams that I haven't got already that I would probably consider bringing in. Obviously, Ollie Watkins, although had an injury, still hasn't really got his place back over Marcus Rashford, so that transfer is not really on the cards for me. I don't want to bring in someone who's a potential minutes risk, to be honest. And then Omar Marmoush currently has the armband for me. Whether he has it by the deadline, I'm not too sure, to be honest, at the moment. It is between him and Saka. I can't see myself really going anywhere else. Potentially Rodgers maybe, or a transfer that I might bring in, but at the moment it's definitely between those two, and it's just down to how many minutes that I think Saka will get in terms of who I'll go with. I'm sort of in the same camp with Ben, sort of leaning towards Saka, but it is still currently on Marmoush. Just touching on the bench, obviously we're bench boosting this week before we kick off to Ben's team. Obviously Areola with Southampton at home's a decent fixture, and why I brought him in for the bench boost. Murphy and Byrne are my planned transfers out this week. I'm hoping to bring in Marco Asensio and then Kiwior from Arsenal, so that'll give me another 2 doublers to play, and then obviously probably demote Isak to the bench in that regard. And then obviously we've got Connor Bradley as well with Leicester away, which obviously is a fantastic fixture. Leicester, although scoring twice last weekend, haven't scored in absolute age since before that, so I'd be hoping for a clean sheet there, and maybe even some attacking returns from Bradley, who looked pretty decent when he played against West Ham and obviously came away with those 9 points last week. So yeah, Ben, what's the thoughts on the old transfers? Do you reckon they're the right moves to make? Obviously, if Edison was to be out, just for clarification, I'd probably just take an extra -4 and move him to Ortega and not really mess around with that too much.
Yeah, I think the transfer plan is solid. You're in a good position because you've only got 2 Arsenal players, and Kiwior is a really cut price option that you can go for, which definitely opens yourself up to being able to go for someone like Asensio, which I think is going to be a really big differential going into this week. One of those Villa midfielders is going to be difficult to get in if you've already got Morgan Rogers in, just because of the price points of the other players that you've got in. A lot are going to have to sacrifice Murphy and find value to get up to Asensio, whereas in your situation, you're not going to have to do that so much. So, yeah, I think the transfer plan's really solid, and I think that will end up being a really decent bench boost. Okay, so moving on into my team, we're off the back of a 90-point week, so a fairly decent week as well. Moving up to around 94k in the world. So moving up into the top 100k, which is decent. Just hope that we can move on and up from there. I don't really have a target rank in mind, maybe top 50k, but it's going to be a big push to be able to get that at the end of the season. Starting off in goal, we've got Raya and Timber as well. The double up of Arsenal defence I'm fairly happy with, especially with the double game week that they've got. It's fairly decent. I think the defence is the one to target for Arsenal rather than the attack. So more than happy to do that. And then, the same as Josh, got Gvardiol and Munoz as well. Hoping for a clean sheet from Manchester City, possibly at Everton away. Not expecting too much in that Villa home fixture. I think that could end up being a bit of a crazy game. And then, of course, Munoz, who I expect an attacking return from. Don't expect any clean sheet. So hopefully more than the -1 that you got me this game week going into next week. So Josh, what's the thoughts on defence?
Yeah, really solid. I think obviously Raya gives you that safety of a definite start. With Neto, he can't play against his parent club on loan at the moment, who's the backup keeper for Arsenal. So yeah, he's very secure for minutes for at least the Bournemouth game anyway. Timber as well, like we say, we expect him to play. The only caveat to that is that obviously Ben White is back from injury, so there could be a chance that he starts ahead of Timber, and it's just whether Lewis Skelly gets a rest or whether Timber gets the rest in terms of playing that left back role if he was to come in. It's an interesting one. Hopefully he does play. I'm expecting 2 starts, to be honest. He's been fantastic for Arsenal this season. Arguably one of their players of the season. Munoz, I thought was really unlucky, to be honest, in Gameweek 32. He comes away with a -1, but could have easily had multiple attack and returns in both games, to be honest. He had that assist chalked off for Eze, and even against Newcastle, he was unlucky not to get a goal. I think it got blocked off the line by his own player from a cross. So, yeah, not ideal from him, but, as I said, the bar is low, so we're expecting for something a little bit better going into 33.
Okay, so moving on into midfield, and I've currently got Bukayo Saka on the captaincy. I just think that the minutes could potentially be there for him finally in the Premier League for Saka. I expect maybe 60, 70 minutes in both games, and I think the ceiling is that much higher than Marmoush for me to go, actually, I think I'm going to do it. So at the moment, I'm set on the Saka captaincy. Let's see if I hold that out. Fairly excited to captain him, given how good he looked against Real Madrid. He was just absolutely electric. So hoping he can translate that into the Premier League. Ismail Assar in there as well, who came off the back of 7 points, I think it was, in 32, which is not, the worst result in the world. We do know how explosive he can be, so I'm hoping that Bournemouth at home game can be something that he gets something from. Morgan Rogers in there as well. Again, like we said, don't think there's a minute's risk associated with that. And then, of course, Salah as well to round off the midfield. Josh, a fairly similar midfield, like the only difference being Sarr instead of Eze there.
Yeah, exactly that. So I think, Sarr Eze has been an interesting 50-50. I think if you're picking fresh now, I'd probably have both of them, to be honest, instead of Mateta. Both decent picks in their own right. Sarr with a little bit better data, and obviously the rest of the picks we've already discussed. I think all of them are good for minutes this week. Hopefully Saka is good for quite big minutes, so that we can see him become the captaincy option that we all want him to be.
Okay, moving on then to the strike force, and then looking into bench boosting as well. I'm sort of fairly similar in terms of my thoughts on doing that bench boost. We got Isaac, Mateta and Marmoush, so very similar, in fact the same front line as Josh. Has just given that wild card timing for both of us. It makes sense I'd have such a similar team. Fairly happy with that front line. Of course, Mateta, somewhat minutes risk in terms of coming off early during games. Hopefully we see those minutes get more and more as each game week goes on. The bench boost is what I'm going to be playing this week, and it does need a little bit of attention in terms of transfers. I got 3 free transfers, 0.8 million in the bank, so I've not got too much to work with. My team value isn't great this season, just because I've been making my transfers very late on, and not been sort of like too worried about transfer movements and price rises / falls. So in my thought process at the moment is, any of those players on the bench could be sold, in my opinion. It's going to be difficult for me to sell Murphy, just because I'm going to struggle to be able to get up to someone like an Asensio or a Marcus Rashford. So for now, I don't think I'm going to transfer him out. It would be potentially Kepa, Burn and Williams that goes out. Most likely 2 of the 3. If I'm feeling like I really need to attack this bench boost, I will do all 3. Like, I don't think, at this point in the season, I may as well just throw my all at this bench boost and see what can happen. For example, Kappa, I could easily go to someone like Ortega for Manchester City. I think he's going to be fairly popular this week in terms of a goalkeeper transfer, and that means I could go either Burn or Williams to like an Esri Consul or someone like that. And then maybe the second free transfer to someone who has a good good single game week. Sorry, because I'm not too confident on Villa's chances in this double. Josh, what's the thoughts on the final team and then the potential transfer plans to activate that bench boost?
Yes, it's an interesting one. Obviously, Kepa, I think you could argue that he could stay. I don't think he's a necessary must sell, but obviously to get a doubler in would be nice. He proved last week, and it's a fairly good Fulham team that he can, return many saves as well, not just the clean sheet points. He's got 7 saves last week, so Crystal Palace away expect something similar to happen there, where he's making quite a few saves, especially with how, I guess, wasteful Palace have been in their forward line. They're having numerous chances that they're seeming to not put away at the moment. Murphy's the interesting one. I don't mind keeping him. Like, if you have him and you can't really move him, and in your situation, then he's fine to keep. He has the 3rd most goal contributions since December. Only Salah and Isak have more in the Premier League, which is crazy numbers for someone who's only 5 million in FPL. I think if you did really want to move him, someone like Marlon could be an option. Obviously, he doesn't play in the Champions League due to playing for Dortmund in the competition earlier, and I think he's returned in his last 3 games, one of them being a double-digit haul as well. And I think within that time, he's only played about 70 or 80 minutes. So, he can be explosive off the bench as well. So even if he does get a bench, and it's not the end of the world. So if you're looking for a cut price midfielder there for Villa, and you've already got Rodgers, then he'd probably be my play. And I agree with what you're saying about the defenders. I think the single game week options could definitely be outscoring the doubles here. It happened last game week for myself with Conor Bradley with West Ham at home. He's outscored both Dan Burn as well as Munoz put together. So I wouldn't shy away from single game week players, especially if they have fantastic fixtures like Liverpool have this week. Okay then, so that wraps up our Gameweek 33 team reveals and our bench boost reveals as well. Let us know if you're going to be playing a chip this week. I know there's a lot of free hits flying around as well. If you do want to see a free hit team, make sure you head over to our Instagram. There'll be one over there before the deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.